Back-to-school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
This season, Instacart has your back to school. As in, they've got your back to school lunch favorites like snack packs and fresh fruit. And they've got your back to school supplies like backpacks, binders, and pencils. And they've got your back when your kid casually tells you they have a huge school project due tomorrow. Let's face it, we were all that kid. So first call your parents to say, I'm sorry. And then download the Instacart app to get delivery in as fast as 30 minutes all school year long. Get a $0 delivery fee for your first 3 orders while supplies last. Minimum $10 per order. Additional terms apply.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Second and Saints. John Hendricks here alongside Ross Jackson. We're here to talk about Saints training camp. 4 days in. 4 days. Practices have already gone by. Like, I feel like it just got here, but as far as it goes, it's like it just goes by so quickly. And so, like, I don't know. I'm finally adjusted to Cali time, which is nice. And so I'm like hitting a groove here now, and I've had some coffee this afternoon, so I'm going to be a little bit extra, I guess, if you will. So sorry in advance, but how are you hanging out?
And we have a light day tomorrow. I'm not going to call it day off, but we have a light day tomorrow with no training camp practices tomorrow. So there's like some energy going into the day off and all that. You know what I mean? Like that all feels good too. I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. It was a very eventful first 4 days, very eventful first week. I don't know that it changes the way that I look at this team, but it definitely changes the way that I have looked at their presentation and their preparation before. So I'm excited about what we see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I think that's what we've seen the product since rookie minicamp, actually.
Yeah.
To OTAs, to minicamp, all those things that we are seeing. I don't want to say a theme of consistency, but we're seeing the same things that we're seeing. Like it keeps evolving, I guess, if you will. And so that's exciting. I mean, there's a lot of football to go, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of room to go. They haven't really taken a full snap. The pads come on, on Monday. So that's a real big deal. But, the reality is they wrapped up the first week. They're going to be at practice on Monday because they got the day off tomorrow, and a lot of players are going to be enjoying that. So that's going to be good. We'll make a little bit of it. But as you said, the grind don't stop.
Right.
We're still got stuff to talk about and all that. And obviously a ton to talk about from today. There's so many different good storylines to talk about. I think the first one to hit on, though, is no Brian Brzee.
Yeah.
That's a big one, right?
Yeah.
Foot injury. He was there yesterday for practice. Didn't seem like much. I didn't notice him leaving the field. He was there when they were doing all the running at the end of the day. But Brian Brzee has a foot injury that we don't know too much else about. But that's not a good way to, another injury, another star, another big one there.
Yeah.
This is where we're at.
Yeah. 4 days, injuries every day.
Yeah.
You had a pair day one, a pair day two. You have Marshawn Lattimore, in the mix with all this as well. And then you have this. It's not great. And I don't know if it's a conditioning thing or whatever it is, but something's not working or something's not going the way that they're expecting, or it's just bad luck, right? Like that's the other thing that we have to acknowledge too, is that it could just be bad luck, but that is not what you want here through the first week. And hopefully this doesn't end up being a foot injury like Juwan's foot injury was a foot injury, to where it was like, oh yeah, no, his foot just started hurting, and then all of a sudden now he needs surgery. I was just like, so fingers are crossed that it's not that kind of a situation, but it's hard not to think about that, considering sort of the trend of what's been happening so far with this New Orleans Saints team. I think it's probably the biggest concern that I've had, because we don't know the offensive line, defensive line yet. We're going to really start to get a look at that on Monday. So that was my biggest like position concern going in. Right now, I have to say my biggest concern at all is, can this team stay healthy on a more consistent basis?
I hope so. I mean, he had the calf injury in camp last year.
Right.
And look, we didn't see him on the early process. Like, he wasn't a part of the team drills and stuff. So, and again, I'm not saying this is like more speculation, but was he dealing with a foot injury back in minicamp?
Right.
And this is just lingering over from there. And so I think we'll get more information as it obviously comes back. But, like we've said, if we don't start seeing these guys for a few practices, then we'll really worry, because like I said, Kendre Miller making an appearance, just observing practice. That's a good sign.
Yep.
Shane Lemieux came back today, just an observer of practice. So if Brian Brzee doesn't come back on Monday, a little bit more worried. If he doesn't come back at all next week, then we're a lot more worried. So it's unfortunate. But like you said, you bring up the point that, where's this team's conditioning at? Is it bad juju? Is it something where they're just not getting something? Is it because of football shape? Or is it just fluke, right? And so this team really can't afford, and especially at the defensive interior. That's not a position that you can just afford. Like, I know they have Kendall Vickers, a veteran that could step in with Christian Boyd. That's possible. But you need Brian Brzee. We expect him to have a huge breakout year. That's the question mark, is that, yes, they are deep in some areas, but defensive interior is not one of them.
Yeah. And this is your first round pick from last year. Like, this is your biggest draft investment from the previous season. And if you look at the track record of the first round picks, injuries have been too much a part of the conversation, with the exception of Chris Olave.
Correct.
Like that. And look, I want to be careful about that, because I'm not ready to say that injuries are too much of a part of the conversation for Brian Brzee yet.
Right.
This dude is one of the most resilient players that we have seen.
Totally.
Right. And so I don't want to tag him with that, but you just don't want him to end up in that conversation when it comes to the way that people on the outside are looking at this team, which can be unfair, because we only have so much information. Fans only have so much information, all that. But it's something that you just don't want to see get worse than it is. And Brzee is a dude that has the ability to have a big time impact for you. He is a remarkably talented player. You want him on the football field.
Yeah. And I think that the big thing is that, we're starting to see Juwan Johnson a lot more. He's catching passes before practice and after practice, as we noted yesterday. And so I think for him, Brzee, it's going to be one of those, hopefully it's like just a little flare up, and then we'll start seeing him in. But now, even if that's the case, he's still going to miss a little bit of time, some practices. He definitely should get the work and the reps and stuff, because you're going to be behind because of these injuries, right? And I know he's a smart and talented player. Let's not overlook that fact. But the reality is that when you're not available, when you're not out there, you do miss a lot. And hopefully it's nothing serious. But at the same time, it's definitely unfortunate that the Saints are having to go another day, another injury, and then they're going to have to figure things out as they go, right? And so we'll find out more Monday on that one. As far as the other things go, a couple of transaction-wise, they did waive undrafted rookie Nori Newili today. I like this guy. Unfortunate that he's a guy that got waived on it. This is the NFL. It's a tough business, right? But bring in Chandler Brewer from the formerly of the Jaguars. And so he's somebody that has some experience, not like starting experience, but a reserve guy that maybe could be something on the depth chart. But at the same time, you don't know, right? But other than that, no big surprises from practices as far as the attendance goes. I mean, it's kind of been the same thing, par for the course, and hopefully it kind of stays that way. I'd be surprised if we see Kendre Miller in some sort of fashion next week on pads, just because there's no need to rush him back from injury. And look, but at the same time, some of the other guys are really still in the show from him. So it's a something. But I think for practice sake, I think the main thing to start with probably is Spencer Rattler. Yeah. I think he looked his best practice by far. Out of all the things that we've seen, look comfortable.
OTAs, minicamps,
just take it away. Just talk about Spencer Rattler, because we got to talk about him.
No, sorry. I was just saying, even going all the way back to like OTAs. You remember we saw him during rookie minicamps. We were like, bus. Like there was something there. And then it kind of like came off, all this stuff. This was his day, right? Yeah, this was a big day. Big 40-yard completion for a touchdown to Mason Tipton. He moved into second team reps. I don't really as you know, like they're just, or as we've talked about, like they're going to keep rotating Spencer Rattler and Jake Haener into second team reps. I don't think that that's a status thing really to highlight, but I do think that like him just feeling so comfortable in this offense starting to feel comfortable in this offense where he's, running the play action. And because early on during OTAs, stuff like that, we didn't see him running as much play action. We didn't see as much motion we was in. Now we're starting to see more of that. That was true during mandatory mini camps as well. But now we're seeing like the big play action pass deep for this big 40-yard bomb to Mason Tipton. Beautiful throw. He had another one to Mason Tipton as well, who got a lot of action today between Spencer Rattler and Nathan Peterman. Like they love throwing to this guy. Another one that was really well placed over the outside on the left sideline with two inside leverage coverage players around the receiver. So you have to put that in the right spot. Tipton also making a great play to keep both toes in bounds on the catch and stuff like that. So it was a really, really good, strong practice for Spencer Rattler. And I think a practice that he needed. He's not going to enter the starting conversation. Let's not get ahead of ourselves when we're doing all this kind of stuff. But for a dude that, was kind of brought on, it felt like a little bit more slowly than the other quarterbacks and all this stuff, him coming out and making plays like this, that's got to be a big confidence leap for the rookie that's trying to prove what he can be years down the road.
Yeah, and I appreciated the other throws he had. Like he had a short one to Olave, which on a slant, which is really, really nice hookup. Shaheed, another one, but Dallin Holker, that was a dart. He was able to thread in there. I mean, I saw somebody on Twitter say, looked like he about put a hole in his chest. But I think that's what you get with Spencer Rattler is that, when he sees the field, when he is able to process, and if he pulls the trigger, then good things can happen from his throwing style. He's a complete opposite of what we've seen from Jake Haener. And again, go on past shows, we've talked about that difference a little bit there and just kind of the recognition and the play styles there. But again, I think with Rattler, we're not going to crown him second string because look, I think Jake Haener had some really strong throws, especially on the run, like some of the ones that he made today. And so nobody's here to crown a backup here, but at the same time, this is a very interesting competition. And I think what we talked about is it's going to come down to maybe the preseason, but at the same time, this back and forth stuff, it's fun to watch. And it's even more fun because the Saints offense kind of caught a little bit more of a groove today, especially in the running game. Like that was so much like they needed that boost today. But I think with Rattler just continuing to work through it, but Jake Haener, he leaned a lot on Bub Means today. Bub Means kind of ate a little bit. So that was good. But Mason Tipton is another guy we've talked about, for sure. He was somebody on our radar early because of him working with the first team and his speed is a big asset for sure. But, right now, the offense being able to kind of catch up just a few days into practice, this is a good sign for the team.
Yeah, big time. Molly coming in with so who's this Mason Tipton guy? You said his name like 5 times. So Tipton is coming in as an undrafted free agent rookie out of Yale. So not a program that you're typically accustomed to hearing producing like these top level football players, NFL players, and things like that. But a good sign for him for sure, because he's a guy that needs this opportunity right here in order to be able to get out there and be able to make some of these plays. A big speedy guy, pretty good build in terms of body type as well. They've been utilizing him as a kick returner too, because of that speed that he brings. And he is not just book smart, but football smart was a big thing that Dennis Allen wanted to make sure that he talked about with the Yale grad.
Yeah. And I think for him, it's just, he is a guy that got a share of targets, right? And, he just didn't have – it's kind of like Bub Means. Bub Means was on a 3-8 team at Pittsburgh, right? I mean, it just wasn't that good football. And I'm not saying that Yale didn't have a good football program, but of the guys that could shine out, like, you look at NFL competition, all those things, like, again, the way he's able to show up and just continue to work. And again, I think this speaks to Keith Williams too, as a wide receivers coach, just getting some of those young guys ready to go and just being able to perform on a daily basis. Now, it wasn't without blemish. You had a fumble later. Lawrence Johnson did a really nice job stripping it out, and Kool-Aid was able to recover. But again, this is what you want to see from some of these young guys. And I think with the receiving core, some concerns like, Chris Olave is getting some targets, Rashid's getting some targets, but other than that, we've talked about Cedric Wilson a little bit. And outside of that, we've seen Equinemius St. Brown here and there, or we have seen A.T. Perry a little. But, on this wide receiver depth battle, it begs the question, A, they're missing Juwan Johnson right now. But B, do we have enough playmakers there are we concerned that maybe a guy like Tipton is going to need to get in there to reinvigorate this offense some?
Yeah, I think you're either looking at him to get in there and reinvigorate the offense, or his performance to reinvigorate the other receivers, right? Because now they see this undrafted free agent rookie come in making these big plays, and it's like, okay, I gotta show up.
Better.
I gotta do something. Because now you're also, I mean, if you're a guy like A.T. Perry, for instance, like you had this fantastic wrap up to your rookie season, and I think it's fair to say you haven't been able to really see him capitalize yet on that momentum here over the course of we'll call it the offseason as a whole, right? In terms of everything that's been going on in the offseason. And so you see this undrafted free agent rookie come in and start making all these big plays. You're like, oh, okay, I gotta show up. Like I need some, and it drives the competition. We know how much this team, this coaching staff in particular, loves driving competition. Yeah. They love the competition conversation. They want competition amongst their teams, all these other things. And so maybe this is one of those pieces that not only reinvigorates the position group, but reinvigorates the competition there too. So we do see a little bit more of Equinemius St. Brown making plays, Bub Means starting to step up a little bit more, all these other pieces. Another guy that really kind of got close today was Stanley Morgan Jr. Yeah. He was in on a couple of plays.
Almost made that one-hander.
Oh my goodness. There was a diving one-handed catch. Was that a car throw?
That was a car throw.
Yeah, that was a car throw. Yeah. And it was just a little bit outside the frame. It had to be because of the leverage of the underneath receiver that was just kind of underneath his path. He just stacked them just a little bit too vertically. And so you had to put the ball in a certain spot. Yep. But man, when you talk about effort, Stanley Morgan Jr. Went out and like almost caught it. We actually had to go. It was close. We actually had to go. Thankfully,
it's a replay.
We had to go into the replay booth. Catherine Terrell had the video. ESPN reporter had the video, and so we had to go back and like watch it in slow motion and see that it actually hit the ground. Everything like that. So we had to call it, incomplete after further review. But I mean, it was just one of those things though that like, okay, like there he is showing. He was open. He sacked the receiver well, maybe could have created a little bit more of the separation with some inside leverage and then just kind of pulled a little bit that way. But look, you can't completely dictate what the defender is going to do. And so maybe we just start seeing this wide receiver group behind those two big guys and Cedric Wilson, who we've seen kind of come to life here as of late again. Maybe we just see more of that competition now drive them into making some more of these bigger plays. And to be fair too, 4 days of camp, but really only 2 days of a opened up passing attack.
Yeah, for sure. And I think another thing for Stanley Morgan Jr., to credit him, they had a quick out to the right with Rashid Shaheed. He had an excellent block out there. So that matters as well. Mm-hmm. And so again, nothing really goes unnoticed, but this wide receiving core, I think they're going to have their opportunities. And I tell you that quarterback play is one thing, but getting the run game going was big today too, because we saw more second level runs than we've seen in 3 practices.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably in a long time. And again, the thing to appreciate, it wasn't just like an Alvin Kamara. It was also Jamal Williams getting to the second level. It was Jacob Kabodi. It was Jordan Mims. We've been talking about him. Everybody else now has him on the radar, but we've been talking about Jordan Mims for a long time. And so again, he's got still an uphill battle to make the roster, but with Kendre Miller out, he gets a chance and an opportunity. And so, and James Robinson even gets some looks today, some flashes. But I think what I was saying is the fact that this offense, when you're able to run the football, you can open up the passing game. And so I think not that it's directly related today, but when you establish the run, it makes it easier to pass in a lot of different situations. And I think somewhat we're seeing a little bit of semblance of that today.
Yeah. Oh, big time. And I think that one of the things that Eric McCoy talked about after practice today in his excellent post-practice presser, he was awesome.
Always.
You're right. He's always awesome. And he was talking about how like the play action game feeds off of the run game, but it also helps to open the run game up. And so we've seen some of that, I think, to where, we were sitting there watching one of these plays. We were like, oh no, like that. There was a hole there. There was a hole there. So even though they're not in padded practices, that was one of those plays that was so well executed, so well blocked, or maybe just well called, however you want to look at it, but so well executed that you could see that it was going to work.
Yeah.
And I loved seeing that today. We saw a good bit of that. That was on a Jordan Mims run, if I remember correctly. And so I think that like seeing that, having the day off, coming back from Monday when they put the pads on and that run game really gets to be physical and do what it does. I think that showed up right at the right time. And it just feels like everything's just kind of, it's not that everything is improving. It's just that the scaffolding order is making sense, right?
Yeah.
Let's get the run game, gonna get things quick passing, all that kind of stuff. All right, let's go a little bit more quick pass, but focus more on the run game. Then they started to open things up a little bit more with the play actions and all that. And then now today, you really saw them go at it with the play actions. And then you saw not only the passing game benefit off of all the work that they've been doing on the run game, but vice versa. And I think that that's a big piece that we got to see today. So it doesn't mean that everything's working perfectly. There's a lot of stuff that actually hasn't gone well and everything too. But this is what you want to see at this point, I would say. And it just feels so much different than the training camps we've seen in recent years.
Yeah, and you got to climb the ladder. I think DA was talking about the other day, just like you're climbing a mountain and stuff and you're starting at the bottom. I mean, you got to start somewhere with this. And look, there were some offensive linemen that were making really great blocks. I mean, Trevor Penning stood out a good bit. Nice that right side, Ruiz as well, Landon Young as well. I mean, there was so many to appreciate. Foster Moreau is one of the other ones. So you got to talk about him. This has been he's been quietly one of the best players, I think, on the offense. And it doesn't really have anything to do with a stat sheet, but the way he's been in position to block. Yeah. Like he made 2 excellent blocks on Cam Jordan. One was in pass protection. One was in run support. And we talked about him bulking up and stuff. And now with no Juwan Johnson's, like, this is a good sign too, because you need your tight end to be fluid, to be able to block, to run. And for Foster Moreau, I've noticed him a couple of practices now where he's in position. He's doing the things necessary. Saw some interesting wrinkles from the offense, but Foster, man, you talk about him.
I think you kind of hit it, man. Like he's just this guy that I think you said the other day, like he does all the dirty work.
Yeah, this is guy.
And that's exactly what he's been doing here throughout training camp, making it all happen. Him getting that block on Cam Jordan that you mentioned, that opened up one of the biggest plays of camp so far. That doesn't happen unless that block happens, or at least it does. But the difference is that we're writing about how it was a sack, but they played through, and you know what I mean? And so that was the difference between all that. And so I think that like just seeing Foster kind of step into that role, having bulked up this offseason, being able to go toe to toe with defensive ends all of a sudden.
Sure. Yeah.
Like it's well, not all of a sudden. I guess he did that with the Raiders too, but it's different from what we saw from him last year. Everything to where he's not helping the chip. He's taking guys and everything. And so it's been fun to see. The other observation on the blocking game was from you that I really enjoyed was the pass rep from Taliesin Fuanga, the hand fight.
The hand fight between him and Carl Granderson. Yeah, for sure. This is a pass pro rep for Taliesin Fuanga. And so Carl Granderson was coming in with a move, and Fuanga had his hands up, but Carl Granderson was trying to beat him with his hands. He swatted his hands down. He was able to push him outside. Like it was a textbook rep by Taliesin Fuanga. And so Carl Granderson has been all over the place in training camp.
Like daily occurrence.
This is a guy I don't worry about. Now, if they lose him for any reason, that is something like a DeMario level impact that I am really concerned if they lose Carl Granderson for anything. But he's been brilliant. Like he's been giving Trevor Penning some fits. Taliesin Fuanga, though, that rep, and Eric McCoy talked about him today, but he looks apart. Now, he also made me a liar, Taliesin Fuanga, because I told her yesterday, I'm like, pointless observation. He doesn't wear gloves. His hands were just taped. I'm like, come on, man. He saw Second and Saints, and it's like, I got something for this Hendricks kid, right? Yeah, well, I'll show him. So, but it's good to see that type of stuff, and it's hard to gauge. We told you in OTA's minicamp, it's hard to gauge an offensive lineman, and their coaches said that too. John Benton said we're practically in our underwear. Now you're in shells. You see a little bit more because of your contact, but when the pads come on, that's what's going to tell it for us, right?
That's going to be.
Do you have it when the pads come on? And, it should be back and forth. But I like seeing a play like that where Fuanga has got his hands where they need to be and stopping arguably the team's best pass rusher.
Yeah, it's a really great way to look at how you evaluate offensive linemen before the pads come on. Yeah, that was one of those ones where, and this happens too if you're somebody that's trying to learn how to watch film or tape or something like that, just what catches your eye. And that was ones where like it was mid rep and John just goes, oh, nice hands. Like it just catches your eye. You know what I mean? And that was a big thing. John is asking too about John Trosclair, not John Hendricks, is asking about Trevor Penning progressing and stuff like that. I think we're really going to be able to give a very solid update on that after Monday's practice. But I will say Eric McCoy talking a lot about how like the transition over to right tackle seems to be working well for him. The confidence seems to be there for him and things like that. He's had some ups and downs. He was great in the one-on-ones yesterday, being able to take on Cam Jordan. I think he might have gotten called. He like in-game situation, he might have gotten called for holding on the first of those 2 reps. But then the second rep did a really good job. Cam deployed a spin move, and he did a good job staying in front of it, kind of floating with them and all these other things. And so we've seen some comfort there for sure. But, there's still going to be times where, he got beat around the edge by Carl Granderson on a different rep and things like that. And so, you're going to see the ups and downs for it for sure. But I'm definitely looking forward to Monday when these guys are in pads and we really get to see them. But where I thought Trevor looked his most comfortable today was in the run game. He had a real nice, just bulldozer moment when he got out ahead of a run and started to make some blocks and plays in the second level, which is I think where he is inherently at his most comfortable from what we saw at his University of Northern Iowa days.
Yeah, and I think that the move to right tackle helps reinforce his ability in the run game because he was a strong run support guy. And then now it's like when you talk about the pass reps, I remember we talked, I think some of this, but last year when he's playing 3-4, Arden Key was like just eating his lunch up against Titans in the opener. And so it was just really hard for him. And I know it was just like either was a processing thing or his hands placement, his foot work. And I'm not saying playing right tackle is easier than playing left tackle, but I think the left tackle responsibility, especially protecting like Derek Carr's blind side. And I'm not saying that Fuang has more of a football IQ, but I think for Penny to build confidence, to put him in a position to succeed on the right side right now, that is hopefully going to translate into, into OTA or OTAs, into the preseason, into joint practices and all that. And that we start seeing more of that from Trevor Penning. But he's one of the many that, when the pads come on, this is the stuff that we're going to pay attention to. Does he look the same with the pads at full contact? And is he getting under anybody's skin too? That'd be the other thing.
It's a little bit of an old school approach, right? Like the left tackle used to be that your left tackle was your best pass protector.
Right.
Your right tackle was your best run protector. Like that was the mold, the build and everything like that. And there's a little bit of an old school approach that the Saints are taking right now. Like they want their run game to be the focus. They want to predicate everything off of it. And so maybe you're right. Maybe going and moving Trevor Penning over to right tackle, it doesn't solve all of his problems, but it allows him to play to his strengths a bit more. It allows the New Orleans Saints to be able to take advantage of the strengths that he has. He just has to be able to show them consistently on a down in, down out basis. It also reminds me too of what San Francisco and Miami are currently doing, which is that you got Trent Williams on the left side. One of the best, if not the best left tackles in the league for San Francisco. And then you have, a really good and strong Austin Jackson, I think it is, that's over on the right side for Miami. That's Tua's blind side. So they got the blind side protectors taken care of. And then they just kind of filled in the rest of their offensive line. Now I like John Feliciano in particular over in San Francisco. He's an interior guy. So they got a guard, they got a tackle. But, I talked to guys that are NFL scouts and they talk about it all the time with San Francisco and with Miami that they kind of just take care of the blind sides and then the rest comes through the system and the scheme and they can just put whoever they want there. And there was a little bit of a semblance of that in New Orleans when Teron Armstead was on the left side and they were cycling through offensive linemen 2017, 2018, 2019, and it didn't matter. Like they were still winning games. And they were still out there doing what they needed to do. They were able to run, all those other things. So I think that is a piece of the mold or a model rather, I guess, that you could replicate with this offensive line if you get left tackle right.
Yeah. And of course, this Kubiak offense doesn't work unless the offensive line is there.
100%.
Like it just doesn't.
100%.
And so it's unfortunate, like a guy like Shane Lemieux, who's played in a version of this system, a guy like that gets hurt. He's somebody that could help bolster his depth. But I think as of right now, when you look at the offensive line, Lucas Patrick is a guy that is obviously in that mix. And so is Landon Young. Lucas Patrick can be left guard. He can play right guard. We've seen him at both during, team reps, and he's gotten a nod over Saldivari. Then Saldivari rotates in. So I think we talked about the left guard battle. That's a legitimate one, but Saldivari is going to have to hold off the veteran because Lucas Patrick, man, he's certainly bringing the passion to practice too. I think so, but Landon Young, he's a guy that can play both tackle positions. And so you're starting to see early on in the process who's kind of emerging, at least for that offensive line 6 and 7 position, and then maybe we get 8 and 9, or if it's just 8, it's here soon enough.
Right.
But it's a thing for Penning that he needs all the confidence in the world. And the offensive line coaches and the building has given him a fresh start, a clean slate, and he needs this year just as bad as a guy like Peyton Turner needs this year.
Yeah,
and so hopefully he delivers in that.
Yeah. John Benton, we've heard nothing but great things about him so far. Offensive line coach, new offensive line coach for the New Orleans Saints. This is his first year here in New Orleans. And Eric McCoy talked about how he instills a lot of confidence in the players. When we were asked him about, what are your impressions? What do you think about what he's added? He talked a lot about how he makes things fun. He said that their meetings are fun. Working with him is fun. The practices are fun, all this other stuff. And fun plays a role, man. Like, that was one of the things that I wanted to ask him about, and that I did ask about, was like, does it play a role to have fun when it comes to installing an offense, learning things and stuff like that? And he was like, yeah, when football is fun, it's easy. When football is a business, it's hard. And there's always going to be business around football, but if you can have some fun out there on the field, that's great. And it sounds like that's what John Benton is kind of bringing there. But I love the note about him instilling confidence in each one of the players, because that's a little bit of the big difference in terms of the approach for him and the approach for Doug Marrone, who's a little bit more the hard-nosed football guy.
Right.
You know what I mean? And so this is the thing that I think that the Saints did well over the course of the offseason, is that when they flipped their offensive coaching staff, they didn't just go out and get younger versions of the same guys. They went and got totally different coaches that are bringing very different and very new approaches to this team, outside of everybody but Clancy Brown, right? Who stayed, because Clancy Brown had already brought a new thing, right? The way that he mixes and matches the rhythm of practices and things like that, so that more specifically or more successfully simulates game action and all these other things. So he was already doing some of this stuff. Now we're seeing it all over the offense.
Yeah, and I think this is a team that hopefully does have fun. They should have fun. Like, I think back to the 17 Saints or the 18 Saints, that those seasons, they were having all sorts of fun. The boom and zoom, Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara doing the interviews in the dog mask, the ski mask,
talking to Dion.
Doing all that. And Michael Thomas just dancing on the sideline. Like, I mean, they were having
the quarterback competitions.
Yeah. Like, they were having fun in camp. They were having fun in games. Like, it's all fun when you win, right? But when you're not winning, you can get to the fun, but you got to put the work in and then get the wins. Then you can have the fun, because, it's just a byproduct. But the Saints, they haven't won anything, right? They haven't done, like, you look at these past 3 seasons, there is no but type of thing.
Right.
Like, they practically failed.
They haven't been able to get themselves in the conversation.
Yeah. I mean, you don't sit here and say, well, I feel good about an almost season. No. You talk to all the players that are involved. No, that sucks. They don't want to be home on the couch in January and we'd be playing a football game, a playoff game. It doesn't matter if it's Lambeau and it's -5 degrees. Yeah. They want to be playing football. And so, again, for this offense, the focal point, right? They're definitely the focal point here. And again, hopefully get some more questions answered when the pads come on.
Yeah.
So,
big time. And I will say, just from some things that John and I have heard, the sentiment of wanting to win more games is a common one. Yeah. Like, there's nobody feels like they've done enough. Yeah. Right. And so that's good. Good place to start, right? Got to admit you got a problem. Yeah.
and I tell you, the other part of it, another offensive lineman, like going back to McCoy's comments, another offensive lineman who's excited about the concept that this offense gives the best chance and opportunity for their stars to actually perform. Yes. Like, that's just again, we've talked about it on the show. Again, go back to past ones, but everybody wants to know what's different. Everybody wants to know, how does this look different? And that's a big one, is seeing offensive linemen getting excited about the concept of putting a guy like Alvin Kamara in the best chance to succeed. Same thing with Taysom Hill, Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, like getting your star players involved and getting them to do like what they're paid to do is what the goal is. But the Saints have had the challenges with that. But it is exciting at the notion that this offense, at least the way they're talking about it, has the potential. And we're not saying it's going to be like top 10 or top 5. Yeah. Like, it's not going to be.
But they were also almost top 10 last year. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. I mean, we'll have to see exactly where it all goes. But yeah, I feel what you're saying.
Yeah. So that's the offense. I mean, there was tons of other things that we probably could call out on that one. I think that their blocking was one thing. The run game, again, Spencer Rattler looking really, really comfortable in that aspect. Defensively, I don't say it was a little bit more of a struggle, but I think the first thing I would start with on the defense is they did an interesting, like a fun couple of drills that I like just honed in on. The first one was they had a race to the ball. So basically they had defensive linemen, they had defensive backs, linebackers that they put a ball like at the 30 or 40, and you have to outrun the other person to go get it. And the person who didn't get it had a consequence of like some squat thrusts and stuff. And so there was some incentive to go get there. And just so everybody knows, Kyler Ball is much faster than Christian Boyd is. I don't think it's close. So Kyler can move, but there were some of them. But I like that element of just to go get a loose
competition.
Ball. And then on the pass rush side, they use, I don't know the technical term. The best way I could describe this is a pad that goes over your arms that makes you look like a Mega Man robot. Like that's really what it is. It's like a yellow cone that you put on there.
Oh yeah, they use it to try to like punch balls out.
But they're using this this pass rushing and just trying to bat those down in the way they're doing it. So it's just between that and then seeing, Dennis Allen, Joe Woods, Marcus Robertson, like just more involved in Michael Hodges. Like the defense is not something I worry about this year. I am worried about like the interior. I am worried about getting after the quarterback, but I feel with the coaching is not the problem for me this year. It's just a matter of can the talent do what's necessary to take this defense to the next level?
Yeah, it feels like it's the flip of the conversation that we had last year on the offensive side, right? So it's like, oh, well, it's the coaching that we're concerned about because they have the talent and everything, or at least it was the game plan that we were concerned about, maybe is more appropriate to say. But in any case, like now, like, the defensive coaching is good. Like it has been. Now you're just wondering, okay, does it work? And the thing that I like too about this is a lot of times you get the question all the time about like, oh, well, the defense is a year older. Are they going to start to regress? The thing that I've been watching, and we talked about Demario Davis running into the huddle when the second and third team's on and like giving notes and correcting and really like dressing some dudes down when they mess something up and everything like that, like being real upfront about it. Tyrann Mathieu doing the same thing. We've always seen stuff like that from Cam. And those are the three guys that, for me, when people ask me like, oh, well, Ross, are you worried about the defense because the defense is a year older? I interpret that question as, are you worried about Cam Jordan, Demario Davis, and Tyrann Mathieu? Like that's typically what people are actually asking. Because otherwise, pretty young all across the defense.
Yeah, I would say so.
And so I think that the thing that I really actually have seen from those aging players is that there's a sense of urgency for them.
Yeah.
It's not that, oh, I'm a year older, and so the game is harder. It's, oh, I'm a year older, which means I only have so much time left to win. So I want to win right now.
Yeah.
And so like there's a sense of ownership that's behind all that, that I think is really interesting. Today, we didn't see any interceptions for the first time. Good for the offense, not as great for the defense because the defense has kind of been all over that. But I think that it goes to what you mentioned earlier in terms of the testament of going back and forth between these two units. And so are you concerned that we didn't see an interception for the first time? Or are you okay with the fact that we saw 5 of them over the course of the first 3 days?
I'm fine with just the turnovers. And before I answer, one thing I did want to say on Cam is I know everybody wants to win a Super Bowl, but he said that's kind of like the missing piece. He says it's between him and his dad, Steve. They got 14 Pro Bowls together, and he knows his window is running out. Like he's just only going to have this year and presumably next year to be able to make a run at it. And so I know that matters to guys like him and Demario. But to answer your question about the offense, like, are the defense not getting, like, they got the fumble, which was good to see.
Yeah.
But I wasn't, because again, some of the plays that we still saw Pete Werner doing stuff, blowing up. Nathan Shepard, I'm telling you guys, like the way he's been able to do and run support. He had a sack on Carr too. Like he's been quietly one of the best interior linemen or one of the best defensive players on the field, in my opinion. So
Nathan Shepard.
Yeah, Nathan Shepard.
Yeah. I was talking over you, so I just wanted to say it.
It's okay. No water in the bed. Like, you know what you get with this show, guys. Like, it's like you're hanging with your friends.
It's like, oh my God, they moved Pete Werner.
No.
That's why I was like, oh, I talked over. I should have done that.
But Werner you still had players that flashed up. Like you still had the Peyton Turners flash up. You still had Shepard doing plays. You had Granderson doing something. For Georgie again, it makes something happen every day. And so again, I think there was also another one, Willie Gay Jr. having a really nice pass breakup on a Taysom pass to the outside, or Jonathan Abram getting a pass breakup. I'll take the turnovers every single day, but them making plays like the pass breakups, the sacks, the blowing up run plays and other things, as long as I see those, I'm okay with no turnovers, because you're not realistically going to get a turnover every single game that you play, unless maybe your 2000 Ravens, which I don't think we'll ever see a defense like that ever again. But at the same time, it doesn't concern me, because I keep seeing it now. I think the second and third units struggled a lot more today and than they have in the previous days. And Demario Davis was making sure to give it to him too, because it wasn't as vocal. The offense, they got the chirp a little bit more today because of some of the success. And then I don't tell you that the defense just didn't do well, but you look at how that plays out, and for this Saints team, you shouldn't have turnover every single day. It should be this chess match, and that's something I think we should appreciate. And when the pads come on Monday, then we're going to get even more information about where this defense is at.
Yeah, we also saw another pass breakup from Jonathan Abram. He was covering. I'm sorry, I'm looking over at my notes, but he was covering. He was covering Dallin Holker over on the right sideline, and this is a little trick. Over on the right sideline on a Spencer Rattler throw, and he ended up making a play there. And on safety, we saw a lot of Jordan Howden with the first team next to Tyrann Mathieu today. So there, I don't know that that's indicative of him actually having leapt Jonathan Abram, because I don't think we've seen enough of. I don't think they've seen enough of Jordan Howden over the course of this offseason yet to fully make that decision. But this is a part of what we expected to see. Then continue to rotate at safety, let these guys. Probably, I wouldn't be surprised if we start seeing them have different responsibilities. We've seen a little bit of Matthew come down in the box while Howden was covering deep and all these other things. So we've seen a lot of kind of mix and match in terms of what the way that the safety position has been working out. But it was interesting to see Jordan Howden jump again into some of those first team reps and get those opportunities. He did have the interception yesterday, so maybe that was a little bit of all right, now go up there and play with that first team to let us see what you do.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination. Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.
Yeah, I'm fascinated to see when this all plays out. Is Howden more the passing guy, or is that Abram the passing guy? How are they going to split up these rotations, and how's that going to look? I know that they had a vision for Howden. They rant and rave about him, but obviously he's just not going to be, you're not going to be like, hey, we know there's a spot open at safety. You're just going to get that role. You know what I mean? Abram's going to fight him for it. And of course, we know there's still the possibility of them adding to it. But I tell you, we've been talking about guys like Will Harris. I think he's been emerging himself as a guy that's looked really good. And I think the safety group as a whole, beyond that, it's kind of, I think Roger Teemer's made some plays, you know what I mean? What you get with JT Gray and such, but this safety group definitely needs to, I said this too, the secondary, this is a unit they cannot afford to have regress. They've been a strong suit. I dare say that they're one of the top secondaries in the NFL now. It's when you get a healthy Marshawn Lattimore, but even last year they showed that they were a top unit without Lattimore in the mix. True. And Marcus May was in and out of the lineup, and they put Jordan Howden, they put Jonathan Abram out there. So they have that potential for sure.
Yeah. We were going through the safety position, and one name that we haven't really talked about much over the course of training camp is Miller Bradford, the undrafted free agent safety out of TCU. Haven't seen him have the big plays, the splash plays like he had back during OTAs and mini camps and stuff like that. So still waiting to see a little bit more from him. But I think you're right. This Saints secondary is the strongest unit on its team, I think is fair to say, particularly at corner. They're very strong, especially when Marshall Lattimore's there. And as you mentioned, they've kind of proven that they can still ball out either way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's kind of the identity there. The position group on the defensive side that feels like it's taken the biggest step forward, to go back to your Pete Werner, Willie Gay stuff from earlier, is the linebacker.
Oh, easily. Yeah.
Like DeMario is always going to be DeMario. Don't get me wrong. And that kind of is what it is. But you even still see him out there making plays, having these moments, everything like that, leading. And even when he's not taking a bunch of reps and he's like standing back and watching, like he's coming back in, he's talking to people, he's kind of helping with everything. And then we see Pete Werner, we see Willie Gay, but then we've seen good moments from Jalen Ford in the run game. Anthony Orji continues to make these plays, like you mentioned. We've seen we haven't seen as much from guys like Khaleke Hudson yet, but Khaleke Hudson over on special teams has had some nice moments and things like that. So just this linebacker room has continued to have these guys come in and maybe stand out a little bit more day after day after day after day. It feels like that's the unit so far that's taken the biggest step for me over on the defensive side. And that's with the caveat of we're still waiting to see what happens over on the defensive line.
Yeah, and I mean, I've been talking to some people, and the buzz around Willie Gay Jr. is just through the roof.
Yes.
Just the fact of they know what this guy is capable of, and the fact that he's going to come in here and be able to play. I mean, this guy's got some major energy. He was dancing out there earlier, and like in before they hit the field, he's like basically dancing from one side of the field all the way to the other side.
I heard somebody say they had 20 minutes of footage of Willie Gay and Jamal Williams dancing.
Yeah,
like 20 solid minutes of just those two.
I believe it. I believe it. I've seen it with my own two eyes.
Right.
So.
And that's it, right? That's the fun. That's the energy and everything like that. We should probably talk about that too. The energy of today's practice, because it felt very different. It felt very different today.
Definitely. I think it got us a little bit spirited moments, I guess. And we talked about Chris Olave yesterday. He had another one today. And, he's letting he's letting him know that the fact is like, you don't play with me. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not saying that this is like Mike Thomas level stuff, but the fact is Chris Olave building on his confidence, John a little bit more. The offense is giving it more to the defense a little bit today. And defense doesn't get as much, but, this has been an ongoing thing. But the energy out there is, you hear it from the coaches. Like the coaches have the energy, the players feed off the energy. I mean, it just is another level. And there was a little bit more friends and family in attendance. You had NFL Network, Rap Sheet was here, Albert Breer was here, you had Sirius XM that was here today. So a little bit more eyeballs on you today for sure. But it was something to seeing how spirited it gets, and guys like Lucas Patrick that just come up out of nowhere, and it's like, I like him. Like, I low-key think the way he has come in here and just has been like, if I'm going to fight somebody on the offense, you got to get through him. You know what I mean? Like, that's really
when Chris Olave and I can't remember which corner it was, but they kind of had like their little back and forth spat and stuff like that. Lucas Patrick just kind of came running. So it had just been a big catch and run.
Yep.
And then Chris Olave touched John with somebody. Second day in a row, we see this. And Lucas Patrick runs what had to be about 20 yards down to go and defend Chris Olave with the energy of an offensive lineman that's like going to go and fight somebody after a late hit on a quarterback. Like he had like that kind of energy, like running down the field. And Lucas Patrick didn't even square up with the person that Chris Olave was arguing with. He just found somebody. He was just like, you, boom. And it started it. And honestly, I like it. Like, we didn't see that kind of fire a lot. Like that's Trey Hendrickson days there. Right. You know what I mean? But like we haven't seen that kind of fire a lot to where it was somebody rushing down to stand up for a teammate, and they've been teammates for 4 or 5 months.
Right.
Everything like that to me meant something. Like that to me looked like buy-in. You know what I mean? And so you see a little bit of the buy-in. I had a moment today, and this is one of the reasons why I love this job so much. Not even job. I love that I get to do this so much. Is I would have never experienced this in another profession. Watching team drills, friends and families cheering. Chris Olave Rashid Shaheed gets a big catch. Shaheed had like a big contingent here. And I caught myself in that moment, like looking around and being like, football. You know what I mean?
That's
like I just like the smile like overcame my face, and I was just like, yeah, football's back. You know what I mean? It just like, it felt good. And so like that kind of feeling, like if I'm feeling that just standing over in the sideline, everything, I'm a very empathic person. I feel when people are excited and everything like that. I can only imagine what they're feeling out on the field. And so when you see that buy-in to where you got players out there working for an hour, hour and a half after practice is done.
Yeah.
You've got players out there, offensive linemen running down 20 yards to defend a wide receiver. They don't even know who they're scrapping with, but yet they're still ready to square up and everything like that. Like, to me, like that's something that like I've always been a big fan of that kind of stuff. I don't mind tussle. I don't mind being a little physical. When it gets over the top, it gets over the top. Right. Everybody knows the limit of where it has to stop, right? Everybody gets that. But I like watching and seeing that here in these practices, because this is what I think Dennis Allen has always tried to talk about when he talked about competition. And you talked about having these players like race each other to get to a loose ball and everything. And you should know too, when we're watching these practices, one of the things that we see all the time is that if a receiver, like let's say, John throws me the football and I drop the football, the first rule for the defense is if that ball hits the ground, you go get it. Doesn't matter that it's not a fumble. You go get the football. And that just kind of, I think that kind of trains a little bit of that turnover mentality and all those other things, but it breeds that competition that you always want to see. And I think that these are some of the things that like have been really illustrating that kind of pursuit or the pursuit of that competition here in camp so far. Yeah,
and this isn't the first time we've seen Lucas Patrick get into it. Like we saw,
that's right.
He got into it with Trajan Jeffcoat. They both got tossed from practice, and so like even when the Trevor Penning stuff is just kind of like, well, Trevor Penning's a hothead and he's just going to get it. Who's he going to fight today? All that other stuff. It's a different dynamic because it's, like you said, a guy coming up and sticking up for his teammate. And again, it doesn't matter, like, seeing that type of energy and just camaraderie, I would say. And again, 4 days into camp, but they've also been together for several months now,
right? Because
of free agency and learning this system and all this other stuff, and so I like seeing it. I like the fact that we're seeing more of it. And, hopefully this is the type of stuff that leads them from being a 9-win team that's on the cusp to being like a 10, 11 win team that's definitely in the playoffs. And right. I think that's the big thing for me. So, and hopefully it continues. I think from this point, let's mention special teams. Let's talk about special teams, because I Charlie Smith, money today. 7 of 7. And he hit the kick from 59 years.
Dang, he kicked that ball so hard it traveled through space and time.
He probably could, to be honest with you. This dude could hit from 70 with no problem.
For real.
But out from 59, I heard that it was they challenged him and he stepped up. Like he hit it from 59 right down the middle, and I was standing right there. He had about 3 or 4 yards to spare on that. And so he was good today. He's only missed 1 kick now in camp. So he's, I think, 10 of 11. And then Blake Grupe's 15 of 15. But a really solid day from him in the field goal department. Now, when it came to the kickoffs, he did have a couple that went out of bounds. And now I think that's more from trying to work on getting the angles right. You know what I'm saying? But still, that's a penalty. You go to the 40-yard line. That's not an ideal situation. But good to see that. And I'm telling you, Matt Hayball, his leg, like we charted – I don't know. I think it was 2 or 3 that had over a 5-second hang time. And the majority of them, like I put in my notes, are like, whew, just whew. 2 of them were whew. And then I got some asterisks next to, I'm not lying, like 5, 6 punts. You know what I'm saying? Like he had it wasn't totally like perfect. Like he had a couple that were just not as good, but those 2 are putting on a show. And again, we said we're not totally in the race for a kicker competition. I think we are more of a punter battle, but good showings from both of those undrafted rookies today.
Yeah, big time. Just for a little context too, Groupie set his long so far in training camp yesterday with a 52-yarder.
Right.
So 52 for him, 59 for Charlie Smith, whose brand is the big leg. You know what I mean? Like that's what it is that he brings. I think the other special teams thing that stood out to me was watching the return drills.
Yeah, that's worth talking about.
Bear with me for a second, because I love me some kick return rules. And I know John and I have been all over this for a while.
We're nerds and we pay attention to everything. Yeah, sorry.
Man. I'll highlight one in particular. It was a rep that went to Jordan Mims,
Yep.
who again is now not only moved up in terms of the running back rotation, but has also moved up in the return rotation with Kendre Miller out, because one of the pairings is typically includes Kendre Miller. But we've now seen Jordan Mims and Taysom Hill kind of line up next to one another for some of these returns. And in the process of doing this, there was one to where he gets the return, pushes upfield. Now they're only working with one half of the return and blocking unit at the moment. So they kind of work one half of the field, then move over and they work the other half of the field as opposed to the full field, which I assume probably padded practices might be a good time to that we might start to see some of that. But Mims, who we've always talked about, good footwork, good vision. Like those are things that you don't really have to question when it comes to Mims. And he ends up pushing up and then angling towards the inside and cuts inside. Beautiful cut. Really, really good, just subtle, quick cut. And as he hits that cut, another running back, undrafted free agent rookie running back, Jacob Kabodi, makes a big-time block. Perfectly set up. Those two things happening at the same time broke what looked like it would have been, at the very least, a big-time kick return, if not a touchdown. Hard to know based upon what would have happened with maybe some additional contain on the backside of the return and everything like that. But we're starting to see now what it takes to create the big return. And we saw Alontae Taylor weave his way through blockers for what would have been a big return there too. So two different styles now that we've seen that have kind of led to what would be what we imagine bigger returns or at least some explosive opportunities for the special teams.
Yeah, and if you hear Phil Galliano and Darren Rizzi, I think it was a touchdown. So
yeah, they were real happy about it.
And let's not forget this too, but Jordan Mims was also playing some personal protector on the punt team too. So more usage on him, and so they're trying to find more ways to get him involved. And again, the special teams, the kick returns, again, right returner has the call, in case you guys want to know that. But just seeing those types of things, because they were working on like the left side of the formation, then they move it to the right side of the formation. So it's not a full kick team.
Right.
Like they are stripping it down. Like the way they are trying to attack this kickoff, this new kickoff rule is they're working like yesterday was the middle lane with just two defenders. Then they worked on the right side. Then they worked on the left side with just a handful of defenders. So they're really stripping this down. And I think when you look at the minutia, big word here today.
Hey, let's go.
Yeah, so I had to up my verbiage because of Ross's big words. But you
Your
look at all that.
lexicon is expanding.
Yeah, let's play Scrabble. But just seeing that type of detail is where we're seeing consistency from this coaching staff. Is detail in. Or Mark Ingram, look at the details. Lord, you know what I mean? But that's what I think I appreciate is the fact that they're stripping this down on the new kickoff rule. That's allowing them to see different things, to be able to, find the lanes, see the vision. And again, this is supposed to lead to bigger plays. And so hopefully the Saints are on the side of making the big plays and not getting the big plays against them.
Yeah. And I think like the place that you really want to see that, not to bring us all the way back to the beginning, but kind of to bring us all the way back to the beginning, the place you really want to see that is the run game. Lots of big plays given up over the course of the past couple of years. Not a lot of big plays in the run game gained or achieved over the course of the past couple of years. So I think it goes to your point about the nuance, the scaffolding, the building, set this, then do this. Now let's add this, so on and so forth. They do that for special teams. They're doing that for the defense. They're doing that for the offense. It's just a different approach. And I think it's an approach that's benefiting the team so far. We'll see what happens when they get it all out on the field. I want to give Jordan Mims one more shout out too for catching a pass in the flats and then just putting an okie doke on a defender.
Oh yeah, he did
at one point. And then Dallin Holker coming and crashing down on what looked like a pretty solid block as well to spring him for even more yards. Nice moment there for Jordan Mims too, who is just, so far doing some nice things. I think if I'm being honest, I think he could do more to take advantage of this opportunity. Yeah. But not mad about what he's doing so far. I think it's starting to come along. And with Monday being in pads, if that's the day that he pops off, that could make a lot of noise. Yeah, I agree. I mean, and he has the opportunity. And we're not telling you and saying that he's just going to perform out of this level where they're just like going to cut Kendre Miller. That's not going to happen. But I did make the point that if he performs well enough, they could make the case to say, let's keep 4 running backs and then just say, like, I'm not going to keep a fullback at the start, or it might make another
roster decision that much more interesting. So it was good to note that. Yeah, it was the way he was juking on some of those things. Like, yeah, you're right. He wasn't the only one. I got a juke for James Robinson. Had a nice.
Oh yeah,
move too.
James Robinson had a really nice one too.
Yeah, so and that was on a little short pass from Spencer Rattler. But look, I think you look at this practice, you look at everything here. There's tons of notes. If you need, I wrote like a autobiography on Saints News Network. Like I joke with Ross about how many words. I'm like, I don't know how it just happens, but I try to give you as much detail, as much play-by-play and that you can get, right? Like, this is how practice flow went. This is the details on who did what, and we pay attention to all of that. And so it's behooves you, another big word, nice, to go to Saints News Network or si.com/NFL/Saints. Go check out all my recaps and stuff. And of course, we're always going to be here for the pod, and Ross is going to have Locked On. But, those are all out there. If you want to know who did what and is this person doing this or, whatever, we pay attention to all of them.
Yeah. Big time. We try to be very detail oriented.
Yeah. Look at the details.
we had a good question here from Sean, who wants to know about a UDFA that's impressed so far. I think the guy today was Mason Tipton.
Fresh off. It's got to be Mason Tipton, right? I don't think there's anybody else that you look at. I tell you, the other one that I think is slowly caught my eye a couple times is Kyle Hergel. He's made a couple of good blocks in run support. And so, again, another guy that, faces a little bit of an uphill battle, but, you got to shape out your practice squad too. But I have liked a little bit what I've seen from him. Defensively, it's Rico Payton almost had a pick today.
Yeah.
He's
so
close, right
there.
Just so close from making that. But other ones, it's hard. I think the special teams are the ones that stand out too.
Yeah.
Like Matt Hayball and Charlie Smith. They're more, and Jacob Caboti. Yeah. Shout out UL Lafayette. Raging Cajuns. I was telling somebody a story about that. That was one of my fondest memories, just going back in a time capsule, 1996. They host Texas A&M. Jake Delhomme's the quarterback. They're not supposed to win that game. It's Texas A&M against then USL, and they ended up upsetting them. So
all right,
it was a pretty crazy moment over at Cajun Field that day. But anyways, I digress. Shout out UL Lafayette. But you look at how things have transpired 4 days in to training camp. Who are some of the standouts maybe that you say, okay, 4 days in, maybe I have a couple of players defensively, a couple of players offensively, who's stood out the most to you?
Yeah. I mean, Chris Olave on the offensive side for sure.
Good to see him eating. You know what I mean? For sure.
Yeah. And I would probably honestly, I'd probably go. There's a couple different directions I could go, but I'd probably go with Rashid Shaheed too. Like both of them. One of the things that I really enjoyed today, outside of the big plays we've seen over the course of the past couple of days, is like them and Derek Carr just constantly working. Yeah. Like they're constantly working, constantly talking. Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed stayed out on the field after practice, working with Keith Williams on like release packages and all these other things. And one of the places where I think you've seen it benefit the most is the slant pass, which was not consistent enough last year.
The timing was off.
Ball was always kind of behind or ahead and stuff like that. And so it's just, you're trying to coalesce all of this stuff to where you're trying to get the timing down on all of it. And, how fast is Chris Olave? How fast is Rashid Shaheed? Well, the answer is really freaking fast. And so
he got behind the defense on one. Carr overthrew him.
Actually overthrew him, which I thought was impossible for Rashid Shaheed.
Yeah.
And so like there's these little things, but it was really like those slant passes where you hit them in stride and then they've got green grass in front of them and a real opportunity to pick up additional yards. The Saints, and I wrote about this before the draft, they need yards after catch. They need that in their offense. In fact, what we've seen for Derek Carr over the course of the past 5 years, thanks to Aaron Schatz over at FTN Fantasy, is that yards after catches have dropped for Derek Carr on a per play basis over a yard from 5 years ago to this year. If you add 1 yard, of yards after catch per reception last year, he's a 4,000 yard passer.
Yeah.
Like, that's such a big deal.
Trying to do the math and carry the one, but
right. Yeah. But like he's in another stratosphere as a passer. And so it makes a big difference. And so when you're able to create those opportunities, because you can get yards after catch two ways. First of which is that you have a receiver that can create it. Rashid Shaheed, I think, fits that bill. He's a returner, get the ball in his hands, let him do what he's got to do. But then you can also manufacture it. And that's what we saw the New Orleans Saints offense do so many times with Sean Payton, with Drew Brees, when they used to be at the top of the league in yards after catch or near, like in that conversation.
Big time.
And a lot of it was scheming up plays that created a conflict defender to where you isolated one defender who had to make a decision to either climb down to defend a route or climb up to defend a route. Whichever one he chose, you went to the other option, catch, run, or inside out conflict where I got to either go outside to stop this potential pass or I got to go inside to stop this potential pass. Whichever one he takes, quarterback goes the opposite, boom, catch, run. That was such a big part of what they did. And there's been so much of a perimeter attack over the course of the past few years and the focus on yards before catch, trying to take the big shot and everything, that bringing everything back down, being able to work low to high, being able to attack the middle of the field again, which is big. It's going to open up those opportunities for the yards after catch. So Chris and Rashid definitely stand out for me in that area, as well as the big play over on the offensive side. On the defensive side, I'll go a little bit more kind of subdued. I'll go away from some of the bigger names. Christian Boyd has just been awesome. He's just been awesome to watch. I'm not going to say that he's going to, it's interesting. Like when it comes to the defensive line, particularly the defensive interior, I don't really talk about starter or not starter
because they rotation.
It's such a heavy rotation, right? Like everybody on the defensive line starts at some point or another, because who's out there on 1st and 10 might not be out there on 2nd and 10 the next play. And that's all that delineates starter from not starter. And so
you hear that, people? Get it right when you cover this team.
Right. And so like, that's the big thing for me when it comes to that. But Christian Boyd has had a constant presence when it comes to him getting into the backfield, mucking up some of the some of the run plays and stuff like that. So that's been a big one for me. And then I guess on the defensive side, if I had to pick one other person, I have enjoyed what we've seen from Kool-Aid before. Kool-Aid got more work on the outside again today with Marshall Lattimore out in the first team when they were in base. He was on the outside and Alontae Taylor was on the inside. And then today, when they went to nickel, Alontae Taylor was in the slot. My apologies. And then when they went to base, they kept Kool-Aid on the outside opposite Paulson Adebo. And that's a little bit of a shift at this point. And so seeing him continuously find ways to make plays, him being around the ball to get that fumble recovery, even though Cedric Wilson made the catch yesterday, him in coverage on Cedric Wilson was big, and being in the right position and everything like that. So I like what we've seen from Kool-Aid McKinstry so far.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of things to appreciate, I think, from all of them. I think for the offensive side, for me, one thing I would say that I was thinking about when you were talking about Yak, we saw a lot of those today, like a short little thing to Dalton Holker, turn upfield and get Yak, or Mason Tipton, again, turn upfield and get, just something, Shaheed, and get in the block and perimeter. So I think you are seeing some of that stuff being installed a lot more and it being more of a focus. And again, we saw that attacking the middle of the field was something, an early staple early on, that we had caught up on and such. For me, offensively, look, I've been impressed. Aside today, like in that last team period, I think Derek Carr's looked comfortable.
Yeah, I would agree.
I think for sure him, Foster Moreau, we've talked about, not necessarily in the stat sheet, but just looking at how he's been able to block and how he's been able to be used a little bit more. I've really liked Olave. I mean, that's probably the big takeaway there. Taysom Hill. Taysom Hill has got to be another one, just because you don't know where he's going to line up. I mean, we've seen him be a tailback today, or lead fullback, or he's going to be a tight end catching passes. I just think the element that he brings to the table, and they joke today saying, players come up and say, what position you playing today? You know what I mean? Just that he has a real opportunity here to distance himself. And again, offensive line, guys that have stuck out. Fawanga is another one that obviously I keep tabs on. We don't talk a lot about Eric McCoy, Cesar Ruiz, but I think they've been just fine. Overall, it's been kind of a little bit here and there for some of the offensive players. I think defensively, there's way more that have stood out so far. Again, you said big names. I guess I couldn't use Willie Gay Jr., although
I didn't take the big name, but you could take the big names.
Well, the big name, Willie Gay Jr.
For sure.
Is definitely up there. Him, Nathan Shepard, Pete Warner, those are probably the top three that come to mind, and Carl Granderson. Like Carl Granderson's like a given, right? But I think some of those guys, just what I've seen from Nathan Shepard, and again, I might be the only one, me and you might be the only one that actually notices and paying attention to the interior. But again, we talked about even, guys like Derek Carr or Foster Moreau, guys that are entering their second year with a team now,
right?
More of a comfort level. I don't think it's by chance. So it is good to see more of that actually happening. And only time will tell. I like what I've seen from Will Harris. Somebody we're not really talking about that I think has had a good start is Paulson Adebo too.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
And I throw even Alante in there. That I put this out in my observation and notes. And again, I could be wrong, but I don't know that I'm saying that Alante is taking more of a leadership role. I think he's taking more of a responsibility dialed in mode, because when they're doing drills with the secondary or the cornerback room, he's usually the first one to try to go in there and line up.
Yep.
And I know it doesn't seem like much, but just seeing his buy-in is big for me.
And anytime that he's not running a drill, he's talking to another DB about the drill,
helping them out.
Like he's helping coach them and stuff like that. He helped them. He was talking to somebody about jammers, being a jammer yesterday and all this other stuff on Thursday, or excuse me, on Friday. I can't remember what day it is. On Friday and all that. Like he has just been, just completely bought in, like completely locked in terms of like making sure that it's looking for work.
Yeah.
He's always looking for work. And I think that's admirable for sure.
Yeah, definitely. So that's in a nutshell. Anything else on your notes that stood out? I mean, there's probably tons, right? I mean, if we had all the time in the world, we could do it, but
right.
We also don't have all the time in the world.
Was it our first false start today?
Yeah, we did see a false start.
Yeah.
That's another thing. Derek Carr had a couple of rehuddles today.
Yeah.
We hadn't seen that yet. We did see a false start. That was when Peterman was in, I think, right? And so a couple of things here and there. Just going back through some of mine. Again, Dallin Holker, we don't really talk about him much, but he's also making plays.
Yeah, and keeps getting those first team reps as well.
Yeah, I don't think at this point that we say – that's why I was curious about him being taken in that draft and stuff.
Oh yeah, the UFL draft.
Like this dude's not going to see like anything less than a practice squad.
Wishful thinking, man. Like way to burn a fifth.
He's involved and he's ready. So I've been excited to see him. Again, we talked about Jordan Mims a good bit.
Foskey and Turner. I like updating on these guys.
That was some other people that I'd say, if you're looking at 4 days in, and shame on us for not saying it, but Foskey and Turner, we've been talking about them. They deserve to be mentioned and roped into those players that I think stood out for those first 4 days. Yeah,
they've had some nice moments for sure. I think I saw more. I feel like I saw more of Foskey today than I saw of Turner.
Yeah,
but
it's fair.
Definitely had a couple of good plays from Turner for sure. I'd be curious about, because I believe they were on the field for the big Jordan Mims run. So I'd be curious if the hole that got opened up had anything to do with either of them.
Yeah.
But that's something that, like the thing that I want to make sure, and we kind of allude to it every now and then. But like when these practices happen, everything gets filmed. In zone angles on each side. You can see the cameras actually when you go out there, and then they go and they review all of this film. So it's not just done and forgotten. It's done and dissected and drilled and looked at. In fact, to the point to where it influences the individual drills the next day sometimes. Derek Foster adjusted his 3-gap drill, which was a little bit more wide zone, outside zone type bounce bang bend. And instead, the next day he came back and then he had only 2 gaps available on the shoots. And the reason why they did that is because the day before there was an inside zone run that he didn't feel was successful. So he came back with a new drill to specifically work on that. So that's where a lot of this stuff comes from. Like there's the observation. Yeah, man. There's the observations that we see and that we give, but they go and they look at this and they work on it. And these coaches build their next script. So what you call basically your schedule as you go through like what drills you're doing on the day and stuff like that. And then it influences how they have approached. I don't feel like I saw stuff like that before. Like it's just,
and we say this, it's not shots at the other coaches or anything. It's just reality. It's like I said, y'all want to know what's different. How is it different? How is this team going to look different? And those are the types of things that we pick up on that should be called attention to. You know what I mean? It's just simple as that.
Yeah,
for sure.
It's not just about this big completion, that big completion, things like that. Like what's the gritty work that's happening, and I think that's among the stuff that's worth mentioning. The detail.
Look at the detail. Yeah, so that's kind of camp day 4 in a nutshell. I mean, there's probably tons. There's probably stuff we forget. Bub Means coming on today. I think this is his most active day for sure.
Yeah.
And other things on offense, like I think Jake Haener deserves a little bit of praise from the way he's been playing the first couple of days too.
Yeah, for sure.
Same thing with Spencer Rattler,
especially the mental side of him right now with everything he's dealing with the diagnosis of the rare form of skin cancer and stuff like that, and he's still going out there and having good practices and everything like that. Like credit to him for making the plays, but credit to him for the mental side, managing the mental side of it as well. Yeah,
absolutely. As we wind down here, if you guys have any questions that do pop up in the chat, we'll try to get to them. But we also want to let you guys know and remind everybody, we're going to keep saying this, but August 8th, for anybody that's in the SoCal area, we are going to have a live Second and Saints show in Fullerton at Bourbon Street Bar and Grill. I think it's going to be probably happy hour 4 to 7, or it's going to be like a 5 to 8 time frame. But I'd encourage everybody, spread the word, come out. We're going to have some giveaways from FOCO, some Saints merch. And so, like I said, I know it's disappointing. Fans aren't here for practices, but a good way, not that might matter, but show up at our event and show them that Saints fans in SoCal, like y'all got a strong following. So flyer to come on that one, and more to come. But you look at how things are going to go. We got day off tomorrow. Are you going to do anything fun? I think we talked about some stuff.
Yeah, we might
go see an Angels game.
Yeah, that could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, they just put that on Disney Plus. I couldn't believe it. Am I allowed to say Disney Plus? Nah.
Yeah, well, who cares?
Yeah, right. Yeah, of course I'm allowed. This is our show. Who cares?
We do what we want.
Take my show back. Take my show. Take your show. Oh, man. So anything specific that you got coming up on Locked On, or anything that you're working on in the lab?
Yeah, tomorrow morning I'll have another show up that's taking a look at
I did think of something for you.
Perfect. I'm coming up on a show to where I just want to look back at, like, okay, 1 week down, how has that changed the perception? What are the concerns that are still happening? Where do things still need to go, and all that? And then Monday, looking at like what we're going to learn, what we hope to learn when it comes to these padded practices. Yeah,
I'm sorry to do this towards the end, but you had made an observation because you talked to Derek Foster, the weighted footballs.
Man.
I think talk about that maybe in 30, 60 seconds or however long it takes. Not on a real time frame, but kind of what you discovered from that.
Yeah, it was interesting. I was watching the offensive drills. So next week, John and I will flip. But I was watching the offensive drills again. And one of the things that I've been paying attention to particularly is the running back position. I'm not going to do this in 30, 60 seconds.
No, it's cool. Yeah, y'all are here.
I'm already like 23 seconds in.
No, you're good.
So
they ain't going nowhere.
But I've been watching kind of the new drills that the offense has been doing with the running backs in particular. And this time all the running backs had balls, but there was like this black like sleeve over each one of the footballs. And it's kind of like one of those slip covers, like you would put on like a book or something like that. Like you'd have like color coded ones, like for your social studies book. Yeah, it was like the silky ones. And so they put these like slip covers on there, which are really meant to simulate like a wet ball, basically.
Okay. Yep.
And then but then they're also like 8 pounds, like mad heavy and stuff. And so you really have to like grip these in order to be able to hold on to them. Plus you have the slipperiness of it because you've taken away the traction of the leather football, or whatever. And as they're running and kind of doing like these strafe drills over bags, Derek Foster's got boxing gloves on. And it's just wailing at the football the whole time. And so it was funny because I was watching it and I was just thinking to myself back with Alvin Kamara when he spoke with us, and he was talking about like fumbles and lack of accountability and like things getting away in practice that shouldn't have gotten away with, and how they ended up finding its way onto the field in games and stuff like that. And he's talking about the fumbles. He's always talked about the fumbles. And Here was specifically a drill that was like, don't you dare fumble it. And
Yeah.
also, I'm going to stack the cards against you. I'm going to put this silk slip cover over the top. I'm going to make the ball weigh 8 freaking pounds, and I'm going to punch at it with boxing gloves, everything, while you're trying to strafe side to side. And so it was a cool, like, another new drill that is being brought in for these running backs. And there were some other like new drills and stuff like that we saw too. But that one in particular was one that's. The other thing that was really cool is that they have this graph over on the sideline that has like all these lines. I'll post a picture of it on Twitter. But it has all of these lines on it that are like the trajectories for a trap run, an outside zone run, all this other stuff. So you can see like a visual representation of what your path should be based on the play call and stuff like that. So it's like a place for them to like learn and visualize this stuff. And he is a big time. He focuses so much on the visual. Right. I'm going to have you run through these literal gates when it comes to like hitting a gap and all this other stuff. We're going to hand you the football so you're working on the mesh. So you're working on the mesh point because it's the layup line. It's the free throw, round of practice and stuff like that, like hitting all these fundamentals and stuff. And so I thought that was really, really interesting to just kind of see this like 8-pound weighted ball. I posted some pictures of it on social, so you can find it there at Ross Jackson NOLA. But like, it was just another one of those cool wrinkles or not even a wrinkle. It's a cool innovation. Let me give it the credit it deserves. A cool innovation that we've seen him bring.
New things brought to the table. I mean, the way you describe that drill, it sounds like an Indiana Jones trap.
Right. Yeah.
This is what happens. You're going to get all that. But I mean, it's you talk about, again, what's different, how coaches are incorporating things, and hopefully it's all in cohesion with this Clint Kubiak offense. It's made to make them better. So we'll see how it does, but it's exciting because it's foreign to us and we've never seen it. And when you do those things at practice, it makes us like kid at a candy shop. You know what I mean? Like that's the best way I can describe it. So thank you for taking the time to do that. I'm sure our listeners and viewers will appreciate that for sure. But that's going to do it for us today, guys. We really appreciate your support. Don't forget to hit that like, subscribe button. We really appreciate how much love you guys are showing us and such. So I can't thank you enough. If you're in the area, be sure to say hi to us. If you see us, I don't know if you'll see us out and about really much, and it makes it tough on UC Irvine and all the practices and stuff. But look, we really do appreciate it. And thanks for the support. That's going to do it for us today. On behalf of Ross Jackson, we will talk at you on Monday when the pads come on. Y'all have a good one, guys. Enjoy your weekend.
Back to school savings are officially in session at Tanger Outlets. Shop tax-free August 2nd through 6th and save up to 70% off the latest school styles. The best of apparel, footwear, accessories, and more. Save at Nike Factory Store, American Eagle, Gap Outlet, Crocs, Under Armour, Banana Republic Factory, and hundreds more. There's always something happening. Discover the latest fun and events all season long. Tanger Outlets, your savings destination.